It's very practical, and I think it could be beneficial to a lot of students. The process of applying to law school. So
Yes.
what was that like, and what tips would you give someone who wants to get into law school in terms of like the importance of the LSAT, the personal statement, extracurriculars, things like that?
Yeah. And I'll preface this by saying if anyone has any specific questions, you could feel free to reach out to me as well, because the process can get a little bit complex depending on the personal situation. But typically there's three things that you need to keep in mind with law school. And really it could level out to four. One is your GPA. And the firms do look at your GPA, unfortunately. It's not the deal killer, but it's better to have a higher one. I think the second one is your LSAT score, and that's the real toughie, because the LSAT is a very rigid test, and it's very hard. And I was fortunate enough, I was part of the Macaulay Honors Program, so they had funding. I actually got test prep for it through an external provider, but really it's a killer test. And I would suggest that if you're interested in law school at all, you start studying for it probably in your sophomore or junior year. I mean, because you're competing with a lot of people who have a leg up and whose parents are attorneys, and they've started as freshmen to study for this thing. It's a beast. And the issue today is that because so many students are going to law school, the average score you need is rising higher and higher. So back when I took it, the average score that I got into Georgetown with, I don't think I'd get in today, looking at some of the news reports I read. So definitely start studying early. You don't need to pay for a test course, but if you have the resources to it, or you can get scholarships. I think there were scholarships, or the programs offer some funding sometimes. I would reach out to the programs and see, because they do help, but there's ways to do it on your own. There are Kaplan books. There are resources you can find online. That's the big one, is the LSAT. I think the third is your personal statement. It doesn't need to say, I want to be, the biggest corporate lawyer in the world. It doesn't even have to say, I want to be the next justice on the Supreme Court. It just needs to really tie to why you're interested in going to law school and why that would benefit you. And for me, it was, I wanted to make a change policy wise. I really wanted to learn the skills to be able to influence policy in government and defunct institutions that I thought weren't working well. Thankfully, I'm able to pivot back to that insight, but my career trajectory has been totally different from what I put in my personal statement. I think four is your references. You're going to need college references. You're going to need job references if you have any. So get to know professors now. Attend office hours. If you did well in a class, get to know them one-on-one, see if you could be a research assistant, but they look at the letters of recommendation very heavily. I think a school like Georgetown, which takes into account the personal statements and the personal characteristics a lot more, will look at those qualities more. I think fifth, if you're diverse at all, highlight it. These law schools are looking for diverse characteristics, and diversity can get you far. Because law firms like to use it as a buzzword. And so if you go into law school and you're interested in a private firm and you say, well, that's a traditional institution, I can never get in, the odds are stacked against me, it's very likely those firms have a diversity program, and you could apply, and it is very likely you could get in if you have the credentials they're looking for. So definitely ride on any of those characteristics. You need to use them to your advantage in this very traditional field.
Make sure to check out the My Career tab on the BC Navigator app, where you can track your career progress based on the amount of credits you've earned, stay updated on upcoming events from the Magner Center, and watch our videos for insight and advice on your career field.